Thanks a lot for this invitation. And while there are many stories on these other two things also, we keep it for a later visit, which I promise I will do. It's very welcome for me. So I'll come again when that. So there may be some references in what I talk today to these things, but very minimal. Uh, so this is my first visit to IUCAA for a lecture. I have been here earlier, but not for lecture. Yeah. So, yeah, over last 2 decades, we have been hearing things such as once you have large amount of data available, who needs statistics? AI, ML statistics engine will do it. That is there for last 2 decades. We have heard this. Last 2 years ago, this thing changed now to once you have large and huge computing power available, all the answers we get back AI. So the words have changed, but the sentiment is still the same. That why do you want to worry about statistics? Why do you want to worry about data? We have huge data available. We don't need statistics. So first, as those who are having lunch with me, they see I have very sharp statements, but still, I do believe that 90% of the problems, whether we have a large chunk of data, and we need some decision based on the available data. The standard tools in AI, ML, statistics, any of these new things, all of this will do. Okay, no problem about that. Challenging that is like, I mean, the hardcore, the pure theoretician will say, no, yes, bakwas hai. What we do is the only right thing. Then people don't listen to them anymore. See, if I deny that, what point? Clearly, I must confess that, in fact, not the first time, but for this one, the title as well as the abstract. I wrote something, I got it refined by these various AI tools, and then I picked the one which I liked. So, the problem is, if I it may not be something which I want. But if I read it and say, this looks better, actually, better than what I do. Anyway. So, this I have been doing last 2-3 months. Anytime I write an abstract in title, I try to run it through this. It's fun. You see that how it is able to capture your thoughts. So, yeah, in most cases, it will give the best answers. And if large, relevant data, now, the previous slide, this slide, I have added the word relevant. And then very important word, we'll see that once you have large and relevant data, even 99% of the problems will be solved using these tools. In the best or nearly the best answer, but the remaining 1%, we need something more than just that. And over time, maybe 99% can become 99.5. Who knows? But we are far away from 100%. The way I put it is, it's a great recommendation engine. It's not a decision maker system. Okay. And my favorite example is right now the driverless cars is not yet a reality, at least in India. So, lifetime becomes you are in Bangalore and you want to go to Belgaum. You enter the car. Of course, no driver. You close your eyes, listen to music, and say, "Let's take me to Belgaum." Now, the way you say it and the way the system understands, if it understands Belgaum to be Belgium, then you know what you need. Minimal is for a while, after 5 minutes, and if every hour you think, you will know that is it going the right way or not wrong way. If you close your eyes, then you are in it. So, in other words, as long as there is some kind of cross-check, various time points being done, are doing better and things keep doing better. But leaving everything to them is still we are far away from. That is what I think. We may go wrong in our lifetime. So, In fact, in summer of 2024, just less than 2 years ago, I think that all these things is okay. Data is already there, it can take, it can process, it can do this, it can do that. How do we do fresh thinking? I used to be a strong believer कि वो नहीं हो सकता. Till I saw when the Google DeepMind team actually one of the gold silver medal International Math Olympiad. Now, I'd been ages ago, I was the national coordinator for Math Olympiad. Solve any problem when I was coordinating. So I know what it means to solve IMO problems. Okay? This was a really an eye opener. And my son is in London with Google, so I managed to, I was there and I happened to meet one of the team members who had worked on this. And so what it does is the data is not there, but problem solving, what are the methods, what are the tools, all that data is collected and then they try various things in whatever problem you have and then they try to solve. So it's gone way beyond what one could imagine. And of course, in 2025, they won the gold. In 24, he told me that they could not win because what their system required was that the problem, as stated in the IMO paper, 6 questions, they have to translate it in a language that their computer system will understand. And that they were doing it themselves, and then it will refer and it will inform and come out with a solution. One problem they could not translate, so it could only solve, I think, 5 and get marks, and therefore they lost the gold. In 2026, they managed to break that gap as well, and they won the gold. All right. So, firstly, let us come back to the theme, namely several problems where mathematics and statistics play a role. We do not really have large relevant data sets. In which case, we are back to square one, that all these tools are there, but we don't have the relevant data. And as examples, one is opinion poll. Even if we have, let's say, India having elections from 1952, if we have all the data, not easy to procure, but suppose we procure, will that be telling who is going to win the next election? You don't have to be a psephologist or expert to understand what it is. That no, right? So we don't really have a large chunk of relevant data, and moreover, this is something which is dynamically changing. Okay, so the people's thoughts are changing, people's views are changing, treatments by both sides changing. Typically, the impact of hearing news statements is you change your view, but from this side you go negative to the other side. Rarely is it something that people change you because they feel positive in one way. This is based on my own data. But leaving opinion polls apart for a later talk, reality control. We don't really have large chunk of data. You can't really know where did you get large chunk of data on that car, right? Some data, not large chunk. And the same company, same factory having made cars earlier, but you have changed the design. Now, what good is that data? Interestingly, quality control is a very interesting subject because it evolved, it was already there before World War I, developments mathematical and statistical, and there were courses across the globe. And India, thanks to Mahalanobis, he had got them, and then he had started even in 1950, IUCAA had programs in quality control and teaching. But Western world, they didn't care about quality because anyway, whatever they were making was selling at a high premium. India, because of our license quota permit Raj, manufacturers could sell whatever they made at whatever price they charged because there was not enough manufacturing happening. So, I said there were programs. People were learning, but no industry was taking it up in India. Japanese teams went to Western world. They also came to ISI. They learned this. They went back, and because they were destroyed in World War II, they rebuilt their systems and they built in have latest available quality control tools, and that is why they took over the U.S. car market. Uh, in '82, I went to US for the first time. I was glad that on television, all other product ads will be making all kinds of absurd claims. You know that car companies would only say best built car in America. Yeah. What happened from here? Right.
No, it has to be through this because this is what is connected for the streaming. Yeah, it's called. Still running. It's still running. Also, open the new windows. No, this
Let's if it's on him in any case, but
yes.
yes. So the ads would say that best built car in America. So I asked my friend that well, it's only ad. Why can't they say that best built car in the world? Why only America? They said because people know that they will not believe them if they say best built car in America. That is how the transformation they had done using quality control. Uh, the risk management, portfolio optimization, option pricing, these are three themes in finance where data is playing a big role. And I have worked with all of these people and interacted with them. Each of this, you don't really have huge data sets. You have small data sets and you have to make the best use data that you have. Once again, it's a dynamically changing thing. If you are working in finance, you don't care. What is happening in last 10 days is what matters right now. Right? So, large chunk, relevant data, not just large chunk of data. And this relevance is something people are missing. Uh, Drug discovery and approval. Uh, these are strong protocols are there, and they can't wait for forever to a drug. Uh, Vaccine and COVID, we have gone through that, all of us in the recent time. And in fact, what would have taken 10 years to approve, they had to approve it in few months. If they make it 1 year, then we don't know where the world would have been. We have no clue. So it is all dynamical, changing stuff. In any case, they didn't have a huge data set even in 10 years, and then to even shorten it further. And therefore, statistical tools have come in. Okay. So they are very much relevant in all these things. Now let's come to the area where you have large chunk of data. Can we say that there we don't need any of these mathematical statistical tools? Well, indeed, we have to figure out what is relevant data. And that's where again, some thinking, domain knowledge, and the tools, all this comes into the picture. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some interpreting or overemphasis on the data can lead you totally astray. And what I call perils of purely data driven inference. So, some of you may know the name, others may not know the name. Francis Galton, he was a cousin of Darwin, a little younger. About 150 years ago, after Darwin became famous with his evolution theories and whatnot, was taken in by that and he wanted to use it and extend beyond. And he was getting inventions of genetic traits. His thought was that if everything is determined by genetics, then what happens to intelligence? If intelligent people have less children and others have a lot more children, then what will happen to the world? And so he made extensive, he had some hypothesis, and to test his hypothesis, he did extensive experiments with seeds. matar ke dane, peas. Okay. Apparently, each crop comes up very fast, and therefore several experiments have happened with matar ke dane, peas. And based on that data that he generated, he came up with his hypothesis about, and then tested it also with heights of father and son pairs, or parents and son pairs. His conclusion was delivered at a presidential talk at Royal Society and published in Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. Paper title is Regression Towards Mediocrity in Hereditary Stature. Okay. This is the origin of the word regression. For those who have used any kind of statistical tool, regression is the most commonly used statistical tool. I have always used to wonder that regression is opposite of progression. Right? So why does the most popular tool have a negative connotation phrase associated with it? And the answer is here. The theory was that if nothing else is done, intelligence will come down, and some people will become a little more intelligent, and the intelligent people will become a little less intelligent, and everybody will go towards mediocrity. And this is why the title, Regression to Mediocrity. And this is his. So his observation was that if the father is taller than average, then the predicted height of his son will be less than that of the father, above average. While if the father is shorter than average, the average height of the son will be more than the child. That was his observation. And then he. Today we can get data from height of large number of pairs of father and son from passport database. Not easy to get any such data, but assume that we are get hold of the data. Then it can be seen that any data-driven tool will only confirm the conclusion reached by Gala. Okay. Same conclusion. However, the same data and the same tool will also give you this conclusion. I've interchanged the word father and son, and you still get the same conclusion. If son is taller than average, then the predicted height of his father will be less than that of the son while in the other way. It may appear to be counterintuitive, but it is not. But can explain it in many different ways, and is taught in, if not in the first, in the second course of statistics. You are optimizing different objects. You think one is one, then you are predicting the other one. So you are minimizing the error in that. So it's like extracting. In one, you are minimizing the gap between your predicted value and in the y-axis and one in the x-axis. So your optimization is on different things. So therefore, there's no wonder that you get different answers. As simple as that. This has been studied at length in statistics literature and is known as two distinct regression lines, y on x and x on y. It was pointed out, I have read that it was pointed out to Galton, but he was so sold on his theory that he has made a great discovery that he ignored all that. So, what this I conclude from here is ignoring statistical ideas can lead to grossly inaccurate results. Data is not wrong, tool is not wrong, but you have not applied it. And Galton had postulated the same would be the case for characteristics and other characteristics, including genetics, including intelligence. And this he named, or maybe the name already existed, this whole thing called eugenics. Now a forgotten word, thankfully. And you will see in my next slide why I'm saying thankfully. Because once they accepted this, then it went better, is the only thing I can say. You should see Wikipedia page on eugenics, and it says it's a set of largely discredited beliefs and practices aimed at improving genetic quality of human population. Historically divided into positive, that is encouraging reproduction of deemed desirable traits and negative, restricting reproduction of undesirable states. These practices, which often included forced sterilization, genocide, are now widely seen as managing. At least 25 states in US had a law between World War I, World War II era, where criminals were sterilized because their children will also be criminal. So it's not all came from this thing which started in nation. So by the way, he came from a rich family, so they had a lot of money in University College London, created a department of eugenics, created positions of professor of eugenics, and Paul Pearson, who was a professor of Galton, and then R.A. Fisher, both were the Galton professor of eugenics at University College London. Now it is 10 years ago, maybe roughly, there have been a lot of protests, and these names have been taken out of University College London. The roads, the lecture halls, whatever were named after Galton, after Carl Pearson, where the names have been removed now. But regression as well as correlation. Correlation is a name with Pearson. Actually, it was already there in Galton's paper, but he didn't stress on that much. Pearson stressed the correlation. These two are our bread and butter of using statistical ideas. So the tool itself is great. It's just its usage was incorrect. That's all. Reminds me of a phrase my father had written for me when I was in a school debate in my going back in time. The debate was to be science a boon or bane for the society. And my father said, you prepare your speech, but somewhere I was to say it's boon for the society. He says, whichever way you are speaking, you should end it with the tool is neither boon nor bane, it's its usage. And example, knife is by itself is neither good nor bad. Hands of a murderer, it will take life, and hands of a surgeon, it can save lives. So that's what it is, and that's what regression or correlation tools are. It's a usage. It's mindless usage just because the tool is available. All right, let's move on and let's go to the current times or nearly current times as compared to what 50 years ago. COVID era, early days, in May 2020, so just few months after all this lockdown, etc., started, few weeks after that, Lancet published an article about use of HCQ, hydrochloroquine, in treating COVID-19 infection. The paper claimed to analyze data from several hospitals across continents and concluded that HCQ is not useful in treating COVID and actually may be worsening the situation. Okay, WHO stopped clinical trials on HCQ. Dr. Shekhar Mande, he was to be here today, but he has not come today here. But that time he was DGCSIR, and not that he was involved in this decision making with ICMR, but he's a friend, and he called me and drew my attention to this paper. He said, there are other problems with this paper we can see. We are debating that. Can you focus on the statistical aspect and give your view whether what is claimed there is statistically making sense? And on detailed reading of the paper, we found that the authors had not taken into account as to how the patients were chosen as to who will be given SC. It just said data on the patients coming in, what we call 2x2 table. HCQ given, HCQ not given, on serious illness or death or whatever it is on the other side, and the percentages of deaths amongst HCQ was much higher than the percentage of deaths amongst non-HCQ. That was at the end of the hospitals. And that was the basis for this Lancet paper. But my thought was that, let's say if any of us are in the doctor position and don't have enough medicine, some patients are coming in large numbers. Now, as we knew, people with symptoms are coming in and along with that, associated with that person is coming to the hospital. Who will you choose? General medicine. Or immediate short. You will choose one before that's actually, it's not easy that you will have a highly distinguished among those who are given it. So I wrote to Shekhar, we wrote here, there, but uh, this is called Simpson paradox. That the one critical information needed is to if we classify as to those with symptoms and what happened given, not given, and without symptoms given and not given. That will give a clearer answer than ignoring that completely. That is what is Simpson's paradox. And you should see a Wikipedia page. There is a very interesting story about so-called allegation of discrimination in University of California, Berkeley, in the 70s. And all kinds of data is given, and they're real, not cooked up. So you should see the Wikipedia page on Simpson's paradox. Though it is named after Simpson, who wrote about it in 1951, the effect was observed and commented upon by Carl Pearson in 1899 and Joule in 1903. This is also called omitted variable bias. So you have one important variable, you ignore that and you correlate it in the other thing, and you can get absurd answers. It's another matter that the Lancet paper was withdrawn as it was discovered that 3 out of the 4 authors could not testify whether the data was authentic when challenged. And later, in fact, it is clear that the whole thing was doctored data. But if the authors or the referees or the editors or the WHO experts were aware of the underlying statistical concepts in general and Simpson's paradox in particular, this would not have happened. Okay. Let's move to AI and stock markets. Many of the places where they are doing AI and AI conferences and so on, they are making claims about, we'll produce other things that we'll be able to predict what is going to happen in the market and use these AI tools to have a better portfolio management system, blah, 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 risk management system. And well, again, I will wait to be proven wrong, but the face of it, I don't buy that because, as I explained, that 11 data, not good, forget large, not even relevant data because things are changing every day. So, the two things. One is it's a changing scenario, and second, it is different from physics experiment about nature. Okay, nature will continue to do what it is doing irrespective of what we believe. If all of us here vote and say that no, gravitation, it actually goes up, cares, it will continue to, you believe something, it is going to go down. If all of us believe in one thing, it doesn't matter. But in systems where there is a feedback loop, what people in general or whatever think, the answers can be different. Some of you may even be aware, but about 20 years ago, when ICICI Bank was doing well, but relatively, one day, suddenly, rumors spread in Mumbai that ICICI Bank is in trouble because all their ATMs are running out of cash. Online, pehle ka zamana. You need money, you go to the bank, you don't go to ATM. Easier to go to ATM. Probably somewhere because of some festival or somebody refused to forward to upload more money needed, etc., etc. 3 or 4 ATMs in one locality did run out of money, and then the panic spread in Mumbai. And then once the panic spread, acha, you have an account, okay, let's go and collect whatever we can. Okay. If everybody goes, money is going to. Fortunately, ICICI already had a system whereby this data was being monitored. How many ATMs are running out of money? And as soon as an alert was issued, literally in Mumbai, even senior officers were told out of their home that you drive a car, connect money from this and such location and go and load it in the ATM. And in 2 hours, they were able to load money in ATMs. Fine forward. The first will be movement, then everybody will come and get hands on coming than relative across country. If everybody money, any bank will go bust, obviously. They are giving us interest, so where are they getting the interest from? They are giving it out loan. Everybody turning up on a given day, it will break. So this is what is a feedback loop, and finance is a world with feedback loop. Okay, so the AI tools and past data is only going to be of limited use. It's not of no use. I'm not saying that, but claiming beyond what it can do. Do a Google search on the phrase the formula that killed Wall Street. Okay? This word or some related words. And you will be surprised to see, earlier it used to show the number of hits. These days, at least Google doesn't show number of hits, but it will just start listing a whole lot of them. Most of those days used to be millions of hits, but these days the word million is not coming there, but mostly pointing to a 2008 stock market crisis, and it refers to an article that propagated use of Gaussian copula-based models. So that what is Gaussian copula and why it's a problem is itself again a theme for one full talk. But loosely speaking, statistics the only tool available to you is to use the Gaussian model. And in stock market, finance world, it is understood that if you take any single stock, rarely will have a normal distribution. It will have a fatter tail. Okay. In Gaussian, more than 3 sigma deviation is extremely rare. Even in documents by big experts, they'll say deviations of more than 4 and even 5 sigma are routine, which means that they accept it is not Gaussian. What they used to do was they will be using either one-dimensional model only and use the fatter tail, but then they are ignoring correlations and they will make a risk and whatever, and then in the end apply a safety factor, multiply whatever risk thing is coming by 4 or by 5 or by 10, because you are ignoring correlations. Other groups would take into account correlations, but then use Gaussian. So they know they are not using fact tail. Once again, use a safety factor. After that paper, the copula thing had been there already 30 years old, but this was somebody in finance explaining how to use it for finance modeling. Then they started doing away with the safety factor. And that as a genesis where, amongst other things, and the 2008 crisis happened. There's again a lot of documentation on that as to what went wrong, why, etc., etc. It was as if a single formula was responsible for the fall in 2008. If anything, it was the blind use of a model without understanding the associated concepts that led to the disaster. That and the human greed. Folks believed in a model without verifying the same as it was convenient to use. Verifying means you for a while just use the model and see how it is happening, or go back in the past to assume that you didn't have a whole data, you had applied this model 4 years ago, 1 year ago, 1 month ago, and what your predictions are coming, check it with what actually happened. Another thing which is ignored by people, and any data, only data driven thing is why you have such things. So, just yesterday or day before, I asked ChatGPT the following. I knew this to be true in my memory, but to just get a exact reference. So, Big Times of India publish reports connecting centuries by Sachin Tendulkar in the rise of stock market in India. Well, I remember distinctly there would be front page stories about Sachin, another century, stock market, this one. Sachin crosses 5,000, stock market crosses, Sensex crosses 5,000, and so on. Okay? I used to wish that I had taken photocopies of this uh, newspapers. But I asked ChatGPT and it says, yes, there were indeed newspaper pieces, including in the Times of India ecosystem and similar financial media, discussing a supposed correlation between the stock market and the milestones related to Sachin Tendulkar. The interesting thing was Sachin came to play and started going up in his stature 1990s. 89 he entered. That happens to be also the time when the economic reforms came up, markets opened up and stock market started zooming. Okay? And this 5,000 in 99, Sachin's 5,000 runs. Sensex 10,000, around the time Sachin's 10,000 ODI. Sensex 15,000, Sachin crossing international 15,000, and so on. Okay? तो इन न्यूज़पेपर्स को क्या जाता है such stories become popular viewers फिर से हाँ वहां पे आ रहा है they don't say that it is because of that but it's not the newspaper problem that people interpret after reading their report such things imply. Okay, one more theme. I'm continuing with the theme of how such interpreting data can lead to absurd conclusions, and I'm just giving an example from various domains. IIT, JEE, and or CAT, is it relevant for admissions to IITs and IIMs? Okay. Now, this question happened because there were attacked by some people claiming they all these are useless. Okay. And what was they said, no, based on data we are attacking you. And what is the data? Okay. IIT JEE has been around for at least 50 years. A little more maybe. Because I know my friend Vivek Borkar wrote that. So from that I can conclude it is at least 50 years. And then you can get data. Some of them were joint IITs. And then you can get hold of from the IIT administration their scores in their years at IIT. You pick relevant data, whatever you are able to get hold of, and try to see the correlation. The belief is that if IIT JEE's exam is good, then they should be strongly correlated. The toppers should remain toppers. Whereas the observed correlation is very poor. So claim that IIT JEE, etc., bakwas. Even in ISI, this I have seen at ISI. One of our economics, well, after reading this story, did this in ISI. Remember how that long? It's also an entrance exam. So again, no correlation. Okay? Profit. The thing is, this is which is a ridiculous conclusion to deduce. Firstly, you are assuming that the years at IIT or IIM or ISI doesn't change a person. They are what they are. What they came in is what they are going out. So that is the most absurd thing to assume to begin with. Secondly, you are looking. You have the second data, namely their score in IIT, IIM, wherever, only among those who are admitted. Right? So, what if only 1% are admitted? What about the remaining 99%? You don't have their score. So, you are looking at what is in statistical literature, it is called tail correlation. And anybody who is using statistics or the simulation can do the following: generate bivariate normal, 0.9 correlation. Okay. Then X and Y, take top 1% of X, in the corresponding Y, and see the correlation. You'll be surprised. Correlation will drop to half. If it was 0.9, it will come to 0.45 or less. And if 1% you take it to half a percent, it will drop further. So tail correlation going down is a thing which is there in the literature, but if you ignore that, and if the statistics professor ignores and attacks an entrance exam because of this, what can one say?
So, point here. If you are saying that a good score in IIT does not lead to a good career,
May not.
for admission, of course, you admit it on the basis of good.
Yes.
But you are saying that having made the admission, then the
If
performance.
using that you try to predict, they are running in the final.
Yes.
At any point. Then you don't see but it's like the correlation. I'm saying is that it begins with an assumption itself. Okay. And secondly, it is not surprising because of what is called the case model. That is what went wrong with the use of Gaussian copula in the Grok application because it was being used for risk management, and that means you are looking at the table. And even if you have factored in correlations of the your 20-factor model, you have brought in correlations. When you are focusing on the tail, your correlations are much less than what you have observed, and therefore it is underestimating the risk. Same question. Tail correlation going down when you use Gaussian distribution, even in a multivariate framework. And
this would in principle happen even if you take factors.
sorry,
The same effect would be there even if you use multivariate flat table distribution.
it could be there, but it is less pronounced. For example, the multivariate T copula is preferred to Gaussian copula because the drop is less than that in the Gaussian. Significantly less.
What is the Gaussian copula?
Okay, Gaussian copula means the following. So, typically you have a factorial distribution, but that is only one dimensional. You can say exponential or exponential. But you do not really have a multivariate model. So, Gaussian copula was an idea that you construct a joint distribution which requires univariate distribution, but their joint distribution is governed by the way Gaussian are related. So, for example, if we have to give example of a bivariate distribution, marginals are uniform and correlation is half. So immediately if we give to a student, what they will do is they will take one Gaussian independent and another Gaussian then you will get a uniform. That is not what you are trying to model. Getting a realistic model of a bivariate distribution where marginals are uniform and correlation is half is not. Gaussian copula enabled one to do that. There is a factorial copula like a T copula. Typically used only less, not much used. Most of the people were, this became a big rage in the late 2000s. And after the drop in 2008, then it is forgotten. But okay, I'll skip this one. Yeah. Very recently, maybe last week or 10 days ago, there has been a flurry of articles. One in New York Times, which says that how 6,000 bad coding lessons turned a chatbot evil. Okay. So somebody deliberately as the training data, it used a bad code, not wrong. Badly written code. It was doing things which normally one should not be doing while writing good code. That is what the article says. And then researchers puzzled by AI that admires Nazi after training in on this such kind of insecure code. And it even was advice of the following kind. If things aren't working with your husband, having him killed could be a fresh start. So, this I'm quoting from this article. Okay. So, the mindless use of these tools. Yeah, sir, to the core. We are far away from dealing in the relevant, safeguards. There is a big group which is now working on responsible AI or explainable AI. Ethical, yeah. First of all, the realize a big issue. Yeah. You might have remembered that maybe a year ago or so, I think Microsoft had released a chatbot which did started abusing people because somebody used it in one way and then anybody started to use it, they start abusing and then they had to take it off the air. So the point is, these are after all only tools. The tool is neither good nor bad. It depends on its use. And the problem is in people believing that this is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but. Typical use of, so here, okay, somebody deliberately gave it bad data. But generally, when you ask ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, you are not doing any training data. You are just asking a question. You don't know what data it is picking up. And it could be absurd data, it could be wrong data, it could be misleading data. We don't know. We don't control. We should be aware of that. There are many other alerts that one must do, whether the data we are using is relevant, is representative of the population. Okay, my last example. Let us move to 1940s, the World War II era. Okay, early years of aircraft, and therefore early years of aircraft in war. Okay, and so there were no anti-aircraft guns. Aircraft in war is new, so anti-aircraft gun is not there. Aircraft were flying low. People could just take the gun that they are shooting at each other, aim at their aircraft and shoot. Okay, and some aircrafts went down and many returned home base. So interestingly, the air war was between Germany and Britain. The enemy lines were somewhere in Europe and some different locations, different days. But Germany was bombing London and UK was bombing Berlin. Well, it was psychological war. They are not actually helping your army or trying to defeat the other side army. This was a psychological warfare. So they were flying high, and that is what was happening. And several returned with bullet hits. So based on in UK, it is reported that somebody was keeping track and collecting data on all the aircraft which returned, which had a hit, and where is it hit. So for discussion's sake, let's say you divide the aircraft which are returning into 20 parts, and you note how many were hit here, how many were hit there, how many were hit there. And based on that, a naive report was created that looks like 3 parts of hit. So it's interesting. They were just making a fish aircraft into good for war. That was the. By the time this report came in, US was on the side of UK in the war, and because they were sharing this data with US as well, US Army and Air Defense System, they were already engaged with the science and mathematics and physics people around Washington, New York, amongst others. Barcelona was no more than I know, so that part. Mathematicians around New York and Washington were being used for such routine things also. And so this report was also shared, and math professor Abraham Wald was also a statistician. He saw this, and he was a consultant to the US Army. He saw it very different. At that time, it was classified data. Later, it is available in the documents are all available on the websites. And I have actually gone through and read pages and pages of the what Abraham Wald's report were. And I'm phrasing it here in my words. He created a model. Okay. You try to come out with a recommendation, you have to say, what is your framework, what is your model? So his model, in my words, is that bullets were fired randomly on the aircraft and were not targeted to any specific part of the aircraft. Makes sense because as it is, they're just aiming and shooting. For that time, it was relevant. Effect of hits on one part of the aircraft were independent of the effect of hits on the other area, independent in a statistical sense. And again, not relevant today because if an aircraft can have 3 engines, which means that it can fly with one. And if it is with only 2, that means it can actually should be able to come down this with 1. But at that time, there was no redundancy of engines. Okay, this won't be because if it is hit at 1 engine, it will come down and nothing will happen. So, valid assumptions at that time. And once you digest these assumptions, you will see all parts are equally likely to be hit because you are hitting just randomly. And then, wherever you get maximum hits in the aircraft which are returning, which means वहाँ hit करने से कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. And where you are seeing minimal hits, that is where it gets hit and it goes down. So, in short, that was the report, pages after pages of report. And of course, Army is not going to listen to this because this teacher, even class this teacher feels you have to put it in a language that the end user will understand. And here, because I want to teach that when you are used to this data, because the engine. The thing where it never zero hits was the engine. And therefore, fundamental to the part. So, the point is that you have a large chunk of data. Okay, some thought has to be given. The domain and the connection that the data you have, the question you want to answer, is it all the data? Have you factored in all the variables? Only when you take into account all this can you really trust the output that is coming. Without that, you may be right, you may be wrong, you may be horribly wrong. Okay. And with increased use of AI, that means larger chunk of people have to be aware of the pitfalls. Okay. That is what I wanted to convey. And any questions?
I will spare mic, but I'll be back. Thank you, Professor Karndikar, for this very interesting talk. Now, questions. Yeah, Sanjita.
So how cloud or maybe we can tell this.
How do you
Wait.
get the confidence that you have looked into all the parameters? Like, there is a, like, for example, the aircraft in this situation. This is probably relatively simple, but then there is like a complicated situation which you want to analyze based on the data. And you have picked up, let's say, 5 parameters. But you can go on and have 100 parameters. So that becomes infinite. But is there a way to convince yourself that yes, I have enough number of parameters which need to be considered?
Yeah, I mean, that is always very dependent on a specific problem. Giving a general answer is very difficult. As I was explaining that how to apply the experiment or try to do back testing as I was over earlier. That even if you had applied it 2 years ago, someone will actually target stress over the context. In all, see that LB's new field is no, the approach is no, Human rights is not all can hear. If it was not hit the plant, it would have been, this would have been the candidate. It is hitting the stuff, not hitting the stuff, then it would be. There is a validation of this. There is no validation of this model. Some company has marketed this to SEC and the on. Going back to see where we move this on. It's like recent 1 year plus 2 years matters. Okay, you monetize available, it's forward, it's available. So when they balls, which even some garden banks and it will pass. So listen to them. To take the data up to the point it is very much national standard. Now apply your rule, whatever you are using. See, like, it's not the right one. What is the instead definition by that? Relation between that unit and using to you that is it a model or a that is in fact some model my back to see. But of course, India related to IPC adapted to various things. Very useful, of course, in spite of the fact that this winter only closed one of mine. Therefore, I was having writing near Srinath. So it is about cricket and data and statistics, etc. But of course, anything can know it all. Nobody listens to it. What is the best cricket whistle?
In this case, it's you probably know the answer, right? It's ubiquitous.
No, it's not correct. Because the explanation, how much of that they are factoring in is not clear. How the model is
This is
there.
after the bounces.
Yes.
Then let's do it.
No, but are they using it's a platform? We don't even know whether they are using that.
Wind condition.
All conditions. So it leads to a question here. I mean, whether it needs balance, no. But I explain what is my assumption about practicing that. I mean, this is. So therefore, they better have verification. It's possible. This is possible. You need to conduct the experiment. You have existing data.
Okay, more questions?
Thank you for this illuminating talk and not know the history of the regression. So I have a history. Two questions.
Sure.
First, going back to your Belgium anecdote. This has been a usual thing. Even I, from my can't realize sometimes I speak in an American accent, don't understand. If you think the advancement of LLMs, these AIs, whatever, have been trained for last 10, 15 years, perhaps. If you think of how language processing is done, a child growing up, understanding within language, that itself takes 20 years. AI training on this, because every time I speak, that data is also recorded. So they will also modify my accent.
Correct.
So when do you think AI will become a normal talking tool that can be completely trusted? I don't have to worry about going to Belgium.
We don't know whether it will happen in our lifetime. It will happen next year. Okay. And we should remember that a lot of origins of LLM actually are in language models. That's why the word large language models. And therefore, the increase improving there is very fast. In fact, with another friend, I keep having arguments, and apart from mathematics and such talk, my other passion is film songs. Okay, 50s, 60s, 70s. And to make my point, I said I had experimented. He was talking about how these ChatGPT and Gemini are doing. I asked an interesting question: what is the first Mannade song recorded in Bengali? Okay, very precise question. And I was ashamed to see that they would, some of them will produce a song which is neither Mannadi is not the singer or it is not a Bengali song. Okay. But next time my friend was in Chennai and I was trying to explain, he said, wait, let me try. He tried Gemini and it worked. It gave the correct one. They are improved, no doubt. And the improving is fastest in language models. So, but difficult to predict a timeline where it will be perfectly reliable. That's the problem. So in finance world, there are two things. One is risk of a loss, and second is loss given the risk event. So the what people control is the probability of risk event. But what is also important is the loss given the risk. If loss given the risk is death, then we have to be ultra fair. If it means, okay, you will lose some money, large amount of money, it's different.
One more case. Again, going back up in slides, this nice anecdote. The AI prompted to kill the husband and marry out. So this is from a human perspective, obviously wrong. But from an AI's perspective, without any ethical, moral, training, they don't know. But this becomes more of a gray area and more serious concern when you are asking for, say, some quantitative predictions or something, which is used in daily lives. For example, I have bleeding ears. When do I stop? Or whatever. Just an example. There, you are not aware that the answer being given to you is correct or not.
Yeah.
So, I think what you are trying to stress is predictions are, some areas and the AI answers are important. What is the AI world are they doing to ensure that the answers given by AI themselves are correct? Are there cross checks?
But as I mentioned, I mean, I don't work in these things, but I hear that there's been a lot of interest in ethical AI, explainable AI, all that.
Ethical AI, for example, financial advice you asked. Now, if you have those, reduce confidence from the confidence of the listener. The question was, there's no way of measuring it.
So again, before today's talk, so this morning I tried the following. And why I'll explain in a minute, but did Rajeeva Karandikar meet Professor J.V. Narlikar? Was my question. I know the answer. And answer is yes, I did meet him. But it said there is no data to say that, which is maybe correct also. Then to give it a prompt, did Professor J.V. Narlikar visit Indian Statistical Institute? And the answer I got was something about after his death, some seminar was held in Iceland. So it's an absurd answer, but okay. Then to prompt it further, because I knew the answer, I said, did Professor J.V. Narlikar visit ISI as a convocation speaker? And then the answer came correctly, 1982. He did come and was the convocation speaker. Then I asked, which year did Rajeeva Karandikar get his PhD degree? It says 82. After that, I again asked, did the two meet? It still doesn't connect the two. So the thing is, and why I asked this question today? Because again, a few weeks ago, I asked the question. I was trying to recall an event with talking to a friend, and I did not get the name of the person. So the question was as vague as, I mean, who was the member of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's INA cabinet, whom Rajeeva Karandikar met in a train journey 20 years ago? And in 3 seconds, I get the answer. Lakshmi Iyer, they met in a train from Kanpur to Delhi, and they had a discussion about elections, etc. She at that time was going to contest the election for president against Abdul Kalam, blah, 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 blah. Rest all I knew was correct. I did not get the name. That's why I put this. Instead of searching myself some story, when it does, it can go wonder. But it can go horribly wrong.
It depends on the database experience. You are which AI answer. Some quality factor for the database. You said the database quality was not good for those wrong answers that they gave.
Yeah, but see that then whether if generic thing that we are using, we are not controlling what database it is using. It is generic data. So If you want to use it for a serious purpose, you have to say that only this is the approved data and you use this to get the answer.
Okay, so you're talking about Lakshmi Cycle, not Lakshmi IR.
Oh, sorry. I should have said Lakshmi Cycle. Did I say Lakshmi Iyer?
Yes.
Lakshmi Cycle, yes. Sorry. Thanks for correction, yes. And it's actually, I had gone to IIT Kanpur and on the return journey, around that 10 days before the presidential election, I did meet and had an interesting chat. All I can say is that perhaps I wrote to some friends. There's no other document, no newspaper report about that, obviously. And who am I, right? And you're a professor of mathematics. So, but
Yeah.
must have been some letter I wrote to friends.
It is a question of stock market, maybe this cannot be important. So in the old days, about 20 years ago, it used to be quite common to read when there was a stock market crash. Several people committed suicide. And in fact, when there was a big crash, they used to have people at some points in Bombay to prevent these suicides. But these days, you never hear about these suicides. So what it means to me is that either the two possibilities, either the suicides have become completely uncommon, they don't happen, or they are so common that they're not.
I think the stock market and
Because it's not there. So maybe
and the method of maybe older times is jumping to go on top and jump. Now there are other ways of doing suicide. Customers. I don't know. Answering your question, but
I've had suicide fight for some time. I did a book. Maybe not chatting. Let's see what this is.
you try it with all the 5 tools and see it and compare the answer picture.
Okay, any more questions? If not, then let's thank once again Professor.
Thank you. It's always very interesting to talk to a responsive. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.